You know, some stories that crawl out of the internet are so strange, so completely detached from reality, you just have to shake your head. This is one of those stories. It's about how a fitness influencer, a guy who built a whole empire on eating raw organs, decided it was a good idea to publicly challenge one of the most dangerous men in podcasting to a fight. He didn't just challenge him. He flew to Joe Rogan's hometown of Austin, Texas, documenting the whole trip while making increasingly wild statements. The grand finale wasn't a pay-per-view brawl, it was a mugshot. Brian Johnson, the man millions know as Liver King, was arrested and charged with making a terroristic threat. And the craziest part of this whole mess, Joe Rogan, the guy at the center of it all, did nothing. He didn't fire back online, he didn't send a message, he didn't even acknowledge it. He got Liver King arrested without ever saying a word. How does something like this even happen? How does a guy who openly admits he has zero fight training get it in his head to call out a BJJ black belt and UFC commentator? And what does the reaction from the actual MMA world tell us about the cringy, dangerous collision between influencer fantasy and cold, hard reality? This isn't just about a weird arrest. It's about delusion, a desperate need to stay relevant, and what happens when online tough talk meets real-world consequences. So to really get how Brian Johnson wound up in handcuffs at the Four Seasons Hotel, you have to understand the character he built. Liver King wasn't just some fitness guy. He was the self-proclaimed CEO of the ancestral lifestyle. He exploded onto everyone's social media feeds with a physique that looked almost cartoonish and a diet that was even more shocking. He preached his 9 ancestral tenets, pushing a primal fantasy that had him eating pounds of raw liver, bone marrow, and yes, even bull testicles. His pitch was simple. Modern life makes us soft, and the only way to get strong is to live like our ancestors. It worked. He pulled in millions of followers across TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, who were all hooked by his extreme antics and what seemed like a genuine commitment to his philosophy. He sold supplements, he sold a lifestyle, and above all, he sold the idea that his body was built by nature. There was just one tiny problem. It was all a lie. The first big crack in the facade showed up in 2022. A YouTuber leaked emails exposing Johnson's secret. He was dropping over $11,000 a month on performance-enhancing drugs. The man who claimed his body was a temple of primal living was actually a product of high-end pharmacology. The fitness world went nuts. After trying to deny it, Johnson had to fess up, posting a cringy apology video where he admitted he was a liar. The king, it turned out, wasn't wearing any clothes. This whole scandal is the key to understanding what happened next. It created this simmering tension between Liver King and people in the fitness and combat sports world who actually value honesty. And the loudest voice calling him out was Joe Rogan. On his Monster podcast, Rogan had been mocking the idea that Liver King's physique was natural long before the proof came out. Rogan's entire brand is built on cutting through the BS, and he saw Liver King as everything wrong with the fake, image-obsessed side of the fitness industry. The beef was even featured in a Netflix documentary about Johnson, which pretty much cemented the public story. Rogan the skeptic versus Liver King the fraud. That history of public humiliation seems to be the trigger for Johnson's bizarre, self-destructive mission. The meltdown started, as these things do on social media. It began as a slow burn and quickly turned into a 5-alarm fire of chaotic energy, all aimed at one guy. On Monday, June 23, 2025, Johnson started posting a series of unhinged videos to his Instagram. The theme was simple, he was calling out Joe Rogan. In one video, Johnson is bear crawling while talking to the camera. "Joe Rogan, I'm calling you out," he said. "My name's Liver King. Man to man, I'm picking a fight with you." The call-out was weird enough, but it was his next line that made it truly insane. He flat out admitted, "I have no training in jiu-jitsu, you're a black belt, you should dismantle me. But I'm picking a fight with you. Your rules, I'll come to you whenever you're ready." Let that sink in for a second. An influencer with zero fighting skills isn't just challenging a martial artist. He's challenging a guy who has spent decades on the mat, a man who trains with pro UFC fighters for fun. It's like a kid with a learner's permit trying to race a Formula One driver. But he was just getting started. The videos kept coming, each one more erratic than the last. He documented his trip to Austin, Texas, where Rogan lives. The threats got more direct and personal. According to an arrest affidavit, one video he posted after landing in Austin showed him saying, "Just pulled up to the capital of Texas, guess what, you're dead sick." In another post, he took it to an even darker place, telling Rogan, "You never come across something like this, willing to die, hoping that you'll choke me out because that's a dream come true." This is where it all crossed the line from a pathetic stunt into something much more serious. It was no longer just a weird call-out for attention. It was a series of direct threats, backed up by the action of traveling to Rogan's city. And while his followers were watching this train wreck online, so were the police. On Tuesday morning, detectives with the Austin Police Department were alerted to the Instagram posts. They saw the videos, they saw he was heading to their city, and they decided to act. They reached out to Joe Rogan, who told them that he had never once interacted with Brian Johnson and that he absolutely felt threatened by the posts. For Brian Johnson, the self-proclaimed primal king, the hunt for a showdown with Joe Rogan didn't end in a cage. It ended in the fancy, air-conditioned lobby of the Four Seasons Hotel in downtown Austin. At around 5:59 p.m. on Tuesday, June 24, 2025, Austin police officers found Johnson at the hotel on San Jacinto Boulevard. With a string of threatening videos and a statement from Rogan saying he felt endangered, detectives had already gotten an arrest warrant. The charge was terroristic threat, a Class B misdemeanor in Texas. And because he's an influencer who has to film everything, of course the arrest became content. A video was posted to Johnson's own Instagram showing the aftermath. You can see his wife discussing what's happening in the hotel before it cuts to Johnson in handcuffs, being calmly placed in the back of a police car. He didn't resist. His primal roar was silenced by the click of handcuffs. He was taken to the Travis County Correctional Complex and held on a $20,000 bond. The man who said he was willing to die in a fight was now stuck in the cold, boring reality of the legal system. He was booked, processed, and had his mugshot taken, a far cry from the carefully crafted hypermacho photos he usually posts online. He eventually bonded out of jail the next afternoon, but the damage was done. The story was no longer about a fight. It was about a criminal charge and a very public unraveling. The reaction from the MMA community was exactly what you'd expect: swift, brutal, and pretty much unanimous. While a few people seemed genuinely worried about Johnson's mental state, the main vibe was a mix of disbelief, mockery, and pure ridicule. Fighters, commentators, and fans who live and breathe combat sports saw this for exactly what it was: a sad, desperate publicity stunt from someone who has no clue about the world he was trying to mess with. The internet, of course, had a field day. Memes were everywhere. Jokes about Liver King's raw meat diet getting him ready for jail food, or about Rogan defeating him without even getting off his podcast stool. MMA news channels on YouTube just ran clips of fighters laughing at how ridiculous it all was. The verdict was in. This wasn't a real challenge. It was the digital version of a toddler threatening a heavyweight champ. What the MMA world gets, and what Liver King clearly doesn't, is that there are levels to this stuff. Joe Rogan isn't just a podcaster. He is a legitimate, tough, and respected martial artist. A BJJ black belt isn't just a cool title. It means thousands of hours of pain, sweat, and dedication. The idea that an untrained influencer, no matter how big his muscles are, could be a real threat was just laughable to anyone who knows anything about fighting. But it went beyond just jokes. There was a real sense of contempt. Many people in the community slammed Johnson for being so reckless and for treating their sport like a cheap prop for his online drama. They saw it as a slap in the face to the real fighters who actually risk their health and to the art forms they've dedicated their lives to. In their world, you earn respect with skill and discipline, not by screaming empty threats on Instagram. So what's the takeaway from this bizarre story? It's a perfect, almost tragic snapshot of the massive canyon between an online persona and actual reality. Brian Johnson built a fantasy world around himself, the ancestral man, and somewhere along the way, he started to believe his own hype. He thought having millions of followers gave him real-world power, that it gave him a pass to challenge anyone he wanted, no matter how unqualified he was. Joe Rogan's silence was the most powerful move he could have made. By refusing to even acknowledge it, he denied Johnson the one thing he was starving for: legitimacy. Rogan didn't have to throw a punch or release a statement. He just let Liver King's own foolishness lead to his downfall. The Austin Police Department didn't act because of some back-and-forth influencer drama. They acted because one person was making credible threats while actively traveling to the other city. This was never a battle between two men. It was a collision of two completely different worlds. The world of influencer culture, where drama is currency and conflict is content, smashed right into the wall of real life. And for the Liver King, the result wasn't a glorious fight. It was a quiet arrest and a criminal charge that will stick around long after the memes are gone. He flew to Texas looking for a fight, but only found the one he'd been having with himself all along.